Hi there, I'm Allysia and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. So today what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to pick a level appropriate piece of music and learn how to play it from scratch. So last week we learned how to read notes, and this song that we're learning today is going to use those notes that we learned, and you're going to kind of apply it and run with it. So there's a PDF for this piece below. It's called Little Waterfall. It's going to be so fun. So let's get started. So let's do a quick review of some of the different things that we learned last time. So first of all, we have this 4/4 thing, and that's our time signature. It's telling us that in every bar, there's going to be 4 beats. And then we have the treble clef up here and the bass clef down here. Now what the treble clef is telling us is to play with the right hand. It's the higher sounds. And the bass clef tells us to play with the left hand or the lower sounds. And then joining the right hand and the left hand together, you've got the brace. And what the brace basically does is it just links the right and the left hand together so that you know you can play with 2 hands. You've also got numbers, number 1 over here and a number 5 over here. And those are finger number markings. They're just kind of giving you a sense of where you put your hands when you begin the piece. And then you've got these swoopy lines called slurs, not swoopy lines. And they're telling you to play smooth. So you want to keep the notes nice and connected instead of choppy. In this piece, you'll see a symbol that kind of looks like an upside down hat. And this is just a rest. And what the rest is telling us to do is, you guessed it, to rest. You're not going to play anything when you see this. This specific rest means that the entire bar or measure is going to be silent. It's called a whole rest because you're resting for the whole bar. So whether you're in the time signature of 2/4, 3/4, or 4/4, it doesn't matter. This is going to mean rest for that entire bar. So here you see there are whole rests kind of littered across the piece. And so like I mentioned before, when you see these, it basically just means nothing's happening. You don't play anything. So over here, the right hand's playing while the left hand waits. In the next bar, the left hand plays while the right hand waits, and so on and so forth. So you're going back and forth. Now let's kind of analyze this piece as a whole. So first of all, it's called Little Waterfall, which gives us an immediate mental image of what it might end up sounding like. So since it's a little waterfall, not like a big roaring gigantic waterfall, the sound is probably fairly light, which fits in pretty well with the instruction to play gently. So keep that in mind when you play too. Also notice how there are slurs throughout the piece, which, to keep a nice smooth sound, it probably is more accurate to a waterfall than like a really choppy, disjunct sound. Notice too how the notes are always moving in a downward motion. And I think that's the most important part that really evokes the sense of a waterfall. The notes are never moving up, they're always constantly moving down. At this point, you should be able to get a sense of what the piece is going to sound like after looking at it a little bit. Now let's take a look at the rhythm patterns. So notice that line 1 and line 3 use quarter notes exclusively, while line 2 and 4 have different patterns. So this one goes quarter, quarter, half, quarter, quarter, half, and the 4th line copies that, quarter, quarter, half, quarter, quarter, half. So notice the rhythm patterns in here. Now, at the very end of this piece, you'll see another rest that we haven't talked about. It looks a lot like the whole rest up here. Now, the difference is the whole rest is an upside down hat. The half rest, which is what this guy is a hat. Well, it looks like a hat. I'm just going to go with that imagery. It looks like a hat that's right ways up. So the difference between the two is the whole rest gets the entire measure, while the half rest, like a half note, is worth 2 beats. So when you add up this half note for 2 beats and this half rest for 2 beats, you equal 4, again, which our time signature tells us that there's going to be 4 beats in each bar of the song. The last thing we're going to look at are the notes themselves and just figuring out what they are. So naming these notes should be well within your capacity if you've been following along and you've been practicing reading the notes. If you're confused about any of this, just backtrack to the previous video on reading notes and that should help a little bit. So if I were new to reading notes and I wanted to figure out what was going on here, first I would remember, okay, well here's my middle C. It looks something like that. Now this next note is actually the next step up from C. So this is a D. Step up again, E. Step up again, F. Step up again, G. So our first note is actually a G. And remember, you're going to use finger 5 there. Now looking in the left hand, we can use the same process except go backwards. So here's our middle C. And then one step down, we have a B. One step down from that, we have an A, and then we arrive at our G, which we use finger 1 with. So both hands end up starting on a G in this song. So you'll notice that it follows a stepwise pattern for most of the piece, where it's one note right beside the other, beside the other, beside the other, like C, D, E, F. What happens here though, at the second line and at the fourth line, is you have actually pretty big leaps. So this note here, we know is a G because it's the same as our very first note in the song. But then it leaps quite a bit. Which note is this one? Well, it's one step up from our middle C, so that would be a D. So you're leaping here from a G to a D. So really keep that in mind. The only other thing to point out is starting from the third line, you'll notice that the right and the left hand are both kind of seeing some action here. So you're actually going to be playing these at the same time. See how every one of these notes is lining up. That means that you're pressing them at the same time. Kind of like we did with the pentascale in the previous video. And that's all there is to it. All right, so now let's go ahead and play the piece so you can hear what it sounds like. I'm gonna play it anyway. I want you to listen to it at least once before you play it, just so you can get the tune in your ear a little bit before you begin. So hopefully after analyzing the piece and then hearing what it sounded like, it was pretty close to what your mental image was. Can you have a mental image of sound? You know what I mean. So hopefully, yeah, you had a pretty good idea of what it was going to sound like before you even heard it. And now it's your turn to practice it a bunch until it becomes super comfortable and you don't really have to struggle with the notes anymore. So even though this is a beginner level piece, you still want to make it sound as beautiful as possible. And that's what ends up making it really fun to play. You want to really try to avoid sounding robotic and just focusing on the notes and the rhythm, and then you end up with something that sounds like this. And it doesn't sound very nice, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So it's not just about the rhythm, and it's not just about the notes. You also want to inject a little bit of expression. Be curious, play around with it. You can think to yourself, well, what would it sound like if I played really quiet? What would it sound like if I went from quiet to loud? That's kind of cool. And what would it sound like maybe if, you played in a different spot on the piano? So instead of in the middle, what if I played the notes high? And so on and so on. You can kind of just play around with it and see what you can discover in terms of expression and just making it sound really lovely. So one important thing to think about when you're playing is try to maintain a sense of ease. Find your zen when you're practicing. Because what happens when you practice piano and you tense up and you're struggling a lot is you're basically practicing how to be tense. You're practicing struggling. And that's not something you want to do, because every time you sit down at the piano, you're basically reinforcing habits or starting habits, maintaining habits, and you want to have a habit of being relaxed when you play. Because then, if you get up and go perform for Granny, you can, instead of getting all stressed out and tense when you play, you're probably more likely to have a more relaxed performance. So that's just something to keep in mind. Stay mindful of it. If you feel yourself really struggling while you play something, maybe you're playing it too fast, slow it down a bit, just keep it easy for yourself. Maintain a sense of ease at all times. Just try to stay aware of it. And that is all. So thanks for watching today. If you want to see more videos, you can subscribe to this channel and check out the blog, pianotv.net. I will see you later, although I won't literally see you, but it's just an expression, and just let's go with it. Toodaloo! Kitten in a box.